Welcome, Islanders. That's right. It's week 5 edition of early waiver pickups. That's right. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently here on the Fantasy Island Show. We're going to try to get you info as soon as possible. So we're going to put you out an early waiver wire, guys, and then we're going to put you on a leftover kind of waiver wire towards the end of the week, just in case you miss out on your guy, on the top guys there. But I'm going to talk about a couple guys this week up on that waiver wire. We're going to start from the bottom up. So basically, let's talk about some tight ends. You're in need of a tight end. You've had Dallas Goddard. You've had Kyle Pitts. They just stink it up, man. You got to try to get something there. Hey, listen, guys, Jake Ferguson's still available in about 40% of ESPN leagues. Jake Ferguson is the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. He's the reason why they let their guy go. He's supposed to have a good year. He's supposed to do everything they're supposed to be wanting to do it within their offense. Just doesn't seem like it's really working out for him. I expect him to flash. He's going to have a few games. Definitely somebody who's going to get involved. I think basically you look at him and he caught 7 of his targets, all 7 of his targets this last weekend, and he had a season high 14.7 fantasy points. So, I mean, look, guys, he's not the best option out there, but tight end is such a crapshoot anyway. If your name isn't Travis Kelsey, at least he's going to get you some solid points going forward. His floor is probably in that 7, 8, or 9 point area. And then it's one of those things. They're not going to do that every week, but he's going to be able to flash. And they're on a team that scores points. So just because of the matchup, or they try to take away CD Lamb or one of the other receivers or the running backs, he might be the recipient of 2 or 3 extra touchdowns in a game, and he might have one of those monster games. And if you have him in your lineup, that could be the week you need to get in the playoffs. Just saying. Another guy in the tight end waiver wire there is Luke Musgrave. I know Bombo likes him a lot. He's definitely a downfield target. And definitely looking at it, he's only rostered in about 34% of leagues in ESPN. He left week 4's game with a concussion. If he can clear concussion protocol, he's got a good matchup this week against the Raiders. But looks like Jordan Love really likes him and is starting to throw to him. Jordan Love has a 97.1 passer rating when he throws to Musgrave. So it looks like they have some kind of good connection going on. I know Bombo mentioned a couple of drops or one that he stumbled on and didn't get it. And it's going to get together for these guys. It's like Bombo told you guys, look, man, they didn't draft Musgrave to be a blocker. They want him as an integral part of this offense. They really thought Tanyan was limited. So Luke Musgrave available on 65% of ESPN leagues. All right, that'll wrap up our tight ends. And really, tight ends aren't really what we're looking at here. The big thing that we want to look at always is because there's always room on your team for another receiver. So we're going to throw some guys out right now. Joshua Palmer. We talked last week about BMW going down, Big Mike Williams and the LA Chargers going down. They got to throw to somebody. Palmer's been there a couple years already. He had some big games last year filling in for Keenan Allen as well. So he's very familiar, and I think Justin Herbert has a confidence level in him. And I think he's not going to be afraid to throw him the ball. So I think that's somebody you could look at. And he's rostered in just over 46% of ESPN leagues. Another guy I really like, and I have him on about 3 teams, and I drafted him with my last pick because I thought he did really well last year. And it just seemed like he's getting no pub and he's getting touchdowns all over the place. But Romeo Dobbs. Romeo Dobbs in Green Bay. He's rostered on 33% of ESPN leagues. Guys, he's available out there, right? I know Christian Watson just made his debut last week, but he played a limited role. I mean, the reality is, Dobbs, he scored 18 fantasy points in 3 of 4 games this year. So him and Jordan Love also building a rapport. And I think that's going to continue throughout the year and probably build. I really like me some Romeo Dobbs, and he's available on almost every fantasy league out there. Another name I want to talk about, he's only rostered in 16% of ESPN leagues, Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, he was sick. He came back last year, came back at the end of the year, fell out of favor with the coaching staff, was a healthy scratch a couple games at the end of the year, but he played in one game, his first game, first play, caught a 60 or 70-yard bomb for a touchdown. So he's there and he's available, and in the offseason, he got busted for betting on games within the facility, and he got a 6-game suspension. It just got reduced to 5. So he's going to be playing up here pretty soon. Actually, I think, let me correct myself. He was suspended for 6 games. He just got told that it's reduced to 4 games and he's eligible to play this week. So Jameson Williams is gonna play this week considering how the Lions like to throw the ball around and they really don't have anyone else other on the other side of, Amon-Ra St. Brown that's really worth the shit. They just have journeymen over there, and I not dogging Josh Reynolds or anything like that, but come on, he's limited in what he can do. So I think they can really use the boost if Jameson Williams has his head together. Again, rostered in 16% of ESPN leagues. Another guy I want to talk about, the last guy, and it's going to be a segue basically into something else that I talked about. And I don't know if you guys heard my reaction last night, but I really like what Arizona's doing. And the more I looked over there before the season, I was sitting there thinking, you know what? Just stay the fuck away from Arizona. Anybody in fantasy other than James Conner's really not worth anything. And I really got to see where his draft position would be to see if I'm going to value him that high. And I didn't. But I tell you what, guys, they are definitely playing. They're definitely on it, and they are definitely fantasy viable. So one of the guys I want to talk about is a receiver, Michael Wilson. Had a pretty big game yesterday, blew up a little bit, but what he's been doing is he's transplanting Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore's been there, and I know everybody who's involved in fantasy has heard this guy's name the past 2 or 3 years. They're just waiting for him to break out. Well, guess what, man? He ain't going to do it. This guy, Michael Wilson, is going to be the guy now. So I'm just saying that basically Joshua Dobbs' favorite target has been this guy. Dobbs has a passer rating of 112.5 when he throws to Wilson, and he's averaged over 2.3 yards per route run. He's on the verge of supplanting Rondale Moore for that number 2 receiver behind Marquise Brown. Keep an eye on him. Michael Wilson, Arizona Cardinals. That's going to wrap it up for the receivers. Now let's talk about some running backs. Again, it's really hard at this point of the year, especially with how thin the running backs are, to really pick anybody good. But a couple guys I want to talk about, and one of them is Chuba Hubbard. I have actually drafted Chuba Hubbard in a couple of my leagues just because I know of his value, and I know the injury history of Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is already dealing with a groin injury, and basically him and Chuba Hubbard split carries this last weekend. I can see Miles Sanders having some other type of injury throughout the year. Chuba Hubbard is he's gonna have just as many carries at the end of the year as Miles Sanders. So definitely somebody worth picking up, and he's only rostered in 18% of ESPN leagues. Another guy who's probably gonna be really looked at this week and probably wanted by a lot of people because he had a big game on Sunday after Javonte Williams went down was Jaleel McLaughlin, Denver Broncos running back. Depending on what's going on with Javonte, he hurt his hip. So now it's a whole different injury. He was out immediately once they took him out. It wasn't that question, we'll see, let's check him out and see how it is. They knew he was out. So I'm thinking this is going to be one of those cases where he's probably going to be out for a couple weeks, maybe even longer. So I think this guy can fill in rather well. Samaje Perine, sort of the plotter there, but this guy's got juice. He is rostered in less than 1% of fantasy leagues. Go get him, guys. Jaleel McLaughlin, Denver Broncos. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's a speedster. He hits the hole really fast, and he just hits the open floor. Once he hits that open floor, guys, he's making the guy miss. He can run to the house from anywhere. So just take a look at him. Jaleel McLaughlin, Denver Broncos. That leads us to our last one, guys. Again, basically it's really hard at this point of the year. Everybody's been scooped up. There's no guys anyone's unaware of. But I think 2 quarterbacks, if you have somebody, maybe you had, somebody who's not underperforming and you've been plugging Matt Stafford in, and now Stafford's got a hip. We don't know what's going on with him. I know Bombo's going to be talking about all the injury guys on his injury report, but how about Joshua Dobbs? Joshua Dobbs is continually performing. He scored 17 or more fantasy points in 3 consecutive games, including 2 of them with 23 or more. This guy's doing it, guys. I mentioned it last night. He has the 2nd most rushing yards and 4th most rushing attempts among quarterbacks this season. I mean, he's putting it out there, and he's getting the job done. And he's rostered in 2.1% of ESPN leagues. That's not being played, that's being rostered. Guys, if you need a backup quarterback, go get him. He's just like a Jared Goff. He's just like anybody else. Or you know who else you can get? The guy I talked about in week 1. The guy I talked about last week in my Sunday matchup coming back and looking good, my boy Sammy Howell. Big Sam Howell in Washington had himself a day against Philadelphia. That's right, he did, man, I'm telling you. After struggling in week 3, that was the only game that he struggled in against the Bills, and it got away from him. He redeemed himself this weekend. I told you he needed some sand. He needed some grit, and he showed it. He fucking he threw a fucking dime on a rope in the end zone to put that thing into overtime with zeros on the clock. Wasn't even phased at all. So I'm just liking him. He scored 15 or more fantasy points in 3 of the 4 games. Again, he had the one stinker against fucking Buffalo where he scored like 0.3 because he had like 6 picks or something. But look at the weapons he's got. He's got McLaurin, he's got Jahan Dotson, he's got Logan Thomas, he's got Curtis Samuel, and he's got Antonio Gibson to throw out of the backfield. Guys, this guy can perform and he can put up points for you. So I think those 2 are my quarterback waiver wire this week. I think they're hot. Pick them up, guys. If you can stash them, stash them. If there's a guy out for a couple weeks, slide them into that IR spot and pick one of these guys up. They're ascending. Like I said, I like me some Joshua Dobbs. I even mentioned Arizona last night, guys. I think one of the other things I want to do is that I want to let guys know, and again, just go back to this discussion. Guys, it's only week 4. 25% of the season's gone. Don't bail on your best guys yet. Don't bail on the guys you drafted in the top 3 rounds. It's still early in the year, especially if they're in new systems, new situations, or they're a little bit banged up. Let things get right. Have some patience. Don't give up on them. Don't trade them for nothing. You know, as Bomba would say, don't trade them for a slice of pizza, right? So even today, like I'm just going to shout out my boy Big R, Big Rudy at my job. He was talking to me about some fantasy today. He fucking loves Fantasy Island. You'll make sure you hit the subscribe button, motherfucker. But what I'm saying is, I told him, hey, dude, I'm doing waiver wire tonight. Let me hook you up. Who do you need, man? Who's taking his shit on your bench? Who's taking his shit on your roster? Let me fill them in for you. I'll pick some guys. He tells me Ryan Mostert. Okay. My man he's a great dude, but he's relatively new to fantasy. Guys, have some patience. They're not going to score like Mostert did last week every week. You know, you want a floor for these guys. His floor needs to be 7 to 9 points. You know, his ceiling probably in the 20s. One of those games like he had 2 weeks ago or last week, that's an anomaly, man. That's an anomaly. It's not going to happen again unless your name's Devin Achane. That dude's different, and he's sick. And if he's on your waiver wire still, which I doubted after last week, go get him. But hey, that's our waiver wire pickups, our early waiver wire pickups, guys. Doing it just for you guys so you guys can get these in once waivers open on Tuesday. We'll have this information to you by Tuesday. Get at them, guys. Get your waivers in. We'll see you on the next one. I'm RW King. I'm out.